Hello and welcome to Inside Israel. I'm Mariam Mazacher. Nowadays, the talk is all about women, but in some places, women are not getting the right type of spotlight. In Israel, women are facing a lot of issues. Lately, over 336,000 women in Israel were victims of various types of violence. We're talking about 11.8% of all Israeli women. Let's take a look.
A new report by the Central Bureau of Statistics, otherwise known as CBS, shows that 11.8% of all women were victims of various offenses in 2018. That means 336,000 women in Israel were victims of various violence. Over the past 5 years, there has been an increase of 41% in sexual assaults in Israel. The most common forms of violence against women were sexual harassment, sexual assault, online offense, violence and/or threat of violence. The report also found that women feel less safe than men across all age groups. Moreover, a staggering 89% of the overall reported sexual assaults were harming women and making them unable to function properly in their everyday lives. Also, the study found that 2018 marked the highest rate to date of referrals regarding sexual assault upon juveniles aged 13 to 18. According to other reports, 1 in 3 women is sexually assaulted in her lifetime in Israel. About 95% of the sexual harassment victims say they did not file a police complaint. Why? The CBS found that among the main reasons for the lack of reporting were the shame the victim feels and police inaction because of minor incidents. Violence against women in Israel is a broad societal problem, which the regime has not allocated the resources necessary to address it. According to the United Nations, violence against women of this proportion has multiple consequences at the individual level, within the family, community, and wider society. It can lead to fatal outcomes and have a significant burden on the economy.
Scholar and activist Madar Lavi joins us from the University of California, Berkeley. It's good to have you with us. Now, Professor Lavi, this report from Central Bureau of Statistics, CBS, is pretty daunting. I mean, why are so many women being abused in Israel?
The statistics in the question are wrong. There is an NGO in Israel called 1 out of 1. Our estimate is that near 100% of women go through at least one incidence of sexual abuse or sexual harassment in their lives. This is not only typical to Israel. What is nice about Israel is that due to our feminist activism, we have high report rates, and it's no longer shameful to report sexual harassment or sexual abuse. The phenomenon stems from the fact that women are treated as property rather than as human beings.
Wait, so you're saying that 100% of Israeli women have been abused at least once in their lifetime? How did the situation get to be this bad?
Unfortunately, there is no recipe that creates alternatives to the patriarchy, which is a rule of the man. What can be done is intensive education of males and men about the human beingness and the personhood of women, rather than seeing them as objects.
Now, on the point you just made, where's the abuse against women taking place in Israel?
Abuse against women happens in all parts of society. The problem is who gets away with it and who doesn't. Lower classes have the social welfare system entering into their homes. So in that sense, the abuse is more in the open, and stereotypically it is tied to lower classes. This is not the case. The elites have many more means to camouflage the abuse, to ruin the reputation of women if they report it in order to keep them silent. And they have much more money to buy justice in the attorney marketplace, because justice is a product. So even though abuse does happen in the elite, in the upper class, middle class, it is more reported in the lower classes than the upper classes. But abuse against women happens everywhere.
Professor Samadar Lavi from the University of California, Berkeley. Thanks for your time. Now, as the professor mentioned, the abuse against women happens everywhere in the Israeli society, but many questions still remain. Major feminist and activist Annette Meyer spoke to us from inside Israel and gave us some inside information on this important issue.
Generally speaking, it's about power dynamics, it's about power struggle, and it's about living in a male-dominated society where women have less money. We sit around the table of decision-making in very little numbers, if at all, and that's why we experience more violence, because sometimes we are not independent enough to make decisions about our own private life, even not only in public sphere. Because not enough women are in the parliament, not enough is being done. It's sad to say that women are mostly the parliament members who are doing work on women's issues. For me, it's not women's issues, it's social issues. It's one of the biggest social problems in Israel and actually in the world. We see it in so many countries that violence against women is rising. It's sort of a backlash, and I don't see enough men in the parliament doing enough. And if we're not represented, we cannot take care after our own needs, and it's not enough for a couple of MKs to do the whole work that needs to be done. And we are urging women to vote. We have 5 issues that we want women to check before they vote for a party for the parliament. 1 is violence. What is the party saying about violence? 2nd is gender, economy, equality. The 3rd is representation. Are there women represented in this party? The 4th is education, gender education. What is this party saying about education, gender education? And the last one is having women in the public sphere, not taking posters of women off of buses and billboards, having women represented, having women shown, having women in negotiation tables. I'm sure that there are still male abusers in the parliament and in very many other spheres that are public, that are not less important. Business, communication, municipal. I'm sure that we have not heard the last story yet. And that's a very unfortunate fact, because these are the representatives that run our life, that we put our lives in their hand, our security, our health, our anything in our life we put in their hands. And to know that some of these men touch, behave, or do to women things that are not appropriate and they don't want, that's horrible, and we need to do something about it as a society. We need the government to be a partner. And for now, we don't feel, first of all, we don't have a government for a long time here, and that creates many problems, including this problem. And we don't feel like we have a partner. We feel that when the Minister Erdan tweets that women murder, women assassination is horrible, but we are not counting the numbers right, that means that we don't have a partner there. And he tweeted that. By the way, I just want to say that it's also a wrong fact, because not only that we count it right, we put out of the list so many women that should be in the list, because it's not gender-based, for sure 100%. So we are so, we look so well into every murder that we choose to put on this list, that for him it's not professional to say it, and it also signifies that he wants to say that it's not a big of a problem. And for us, it says we don't have a partner. You know, it goes back to us being property. It goes back to the patriarchy and to the power dynamic that we live in. But you wouldn't imagine that it will go all the way to murder. But murder is the end result of violence that I think, you know why women went out to the streets on that protest last year? So many, in so many locations in Israel, because all of us can identify with the feeling of being a minority, of feeling violence in the street, of somebody whistling to you, somebody touching you where you don't want to be touched, not paying you enough, not paying you respect. I think it's something that 100% of the women experience, and that's why we have this understanding between us. But still, it's so unfortunate that it doesn't end. Such a simple and basic thing like not to kill someone you married because she wants to leave you, or just because she's upsetting you. For me, it's just really heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking. And surprisingly, we've seen many cases, by the way, from all the spectrum of the political range. And I don't think that we've seen the last incident, as I said earlier, and I think that this case shows us that we are not talking about men that are, you know, from groups in minority in the Israeli society, and they are in poverty, and they are, I don't know, or women that are, you know, in risk, in danger. We are talking about every part of society, and it reaches the highest level of the most privileged society, of the richest men and the most powerful men, sometimes even more, because these men feel that nothing can touch them. And I think it's huge that we can see that something can be done, but it's not enough. We need to join forces and make this our biggest struggle.
There's still a lot more to discuss on the topic. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after the break. Feminist and activist Anit Meyer believes that the abuse of women is also committed by the officials of the Israeli regime, and it's nothing new. Back in 2007, sitting Israeli President Moshe Katsav was accused of rape. He was then tried, convicted, and imprisoned, but scandals like this set the tone for the treatment of women in Israel.
Former Israeli President Moshe Katsav was convicted of rape by court in Tel Aviv back in 2007. Katsav resigned the ceremonial presidency in disgrace after a long investigation into allegations that he raped and otherwise sexually assaulted female staffers. He had immunity from prosecution while in office. This immunity has become an issue to this day. In Israel, the prime minister or the president can use this so-called immunity to escape trial. This is why even after an indictment against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that covers 3 different cases, including bribery, fraud, and breach of public trust, he still continues his post. The point is that abuse in the highest offices in Israel continues even after the Katsav conviction and imprisonment. People from the elite class in Israel and even politicians have been accused of sexually assaulting females. In 2015, former Minister of the Interior, Silvan Shalom, ended a decades-long political career after close to a dozen women accused him of assault and harassment. That same year, Israeli lawmaker Yinon Magal also resigned after multiple allegations. About 2 years ago, what began in the US quickly spread to Israel. The infamous #MeToo campaign, which brought to light horrific patterns of behavior from dozens of famous men.
Joshua Tartakovsky, an Israeli-American independent journalist, joins us now from Beijing, China. Thanks for being with us, Mr. Tartakovsky. Now, do you think that the Me Too movement had an impact on revealing the abuse of women by the Israeli elites? I mean, it's a trending topic there in Israel, isn't it?
I think it's been effective only to some degree among the higher echelons of the financial and intellectual elites inside Israel. As a result of this movement in the U.S., since Israel generally seeks to imitate the U.S. in many ways. So since this took off in the U.S., it also took off among some circles in Israel, and therefore probably there were more reports by people who are more financially well off in the Israeli society about attacks that took place against them. But I don't think it had much an effect on various other parts of the society. People who come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds or from more traditional societies, or people who are not exposed to a higher level of education. I think that this movement did not really have an effect on their decision to report crimes or unlawful actions taken against them. What they did have an effect is, if students who are part of a university campus probably saw more protests going along these issues and the Me Too movement, or people who are part of the certain high social cliques saw it as were more exposed to the importance of reporting someone for a crime that he committed, even if he's very high up in the business or entertainment world.
Now, how have the Israeli women been impacted by this kind of abuse? And can they do anything about it?
That's a good question. If I would dare guess, it would be probably, it happens all across Israeli society. Because as I said, all across Israeli society, weakness is seen as something that one should be ashamed of. So violence and forcefully pushing for things is the norm. And many people are ashamed of what has been done to them. But if I would dare make a generalization or some kind of guess, then I would say that probably among ultra-Orthodox Jews and religious Zionist Jews, these kind of attacks happen the most because there's a culture of secrecy and of doing the dirty laundry inside, so to speak, and not going to the police. And by the way, this is probably the general trend in Israel itself, that there's been such an obsession with having an external enemy, being it the Palestinians or any of the other neighboring countries with whom Israel does not have a peace agreement, that there's an approach that seems to suggest that sexual and violent attacks don't even take place, or not even that widespread within Israel, because the biggest issue is having a budget to fight an external enemy. So I think that's part of the reason why so many of the claims are ignored, because this is not even seen as a priority in the Israeli psyche and in the minds and in the national priorities of the state.
Let's talk more about the violence. What are the most common types of violence faced by women in Israel?
Probably violence, physical violence, sexual violence, and verbal violence. These three things are probably the most common. Of course, online violence is becoming more common now, and it does also intimidation, but probably the most common one is physical and sexual violence, and again, against people who can't really protect themselves, people who are in vulnerable positions, because most of the attacks have taken place by members of the family, by employers, by teachers, by rabbis. So people who find themselves, the victims often find themselves in vulnerable situations where they cannot really report what has happened to them, because, they can report, of course, but the attack itself took place in a hidden setting, in a disclosed setting. It wasn't as if it was in broad daylight, usually. So usually the victims find themselves in vulnerable positions.
That was Israeli-American independent journalist from China. On the streets of northern city of Haifa, we asked women several questions. Questions like this one: do you trust the authorities to handle the issue of abuse against women?
No, I don't think so. I think we have a long way to go. The fact that there are more awareness to what the movement is becoming and where we could go, the awareness has been great, but it's not enough. The fact that we're still with no equal pay whatsoever, so I don't think we're making progress.
No, I do not think so. I think there are so much more that the government can do to improve women's rights and protection.
אני חושבת שעדיין יש מקום לעשות שינויים ולהרחיב את הפעילות כנגד. כן נעשים כל מיני דברים, לא מספיק.
No, but I'm volunteer in something, and I know that it's very difficult to go to the police because usually they don't believe you, or they can ask you why now you suddenly came to complain. And if you're going to court, it's terrible. You feel that they attacked you again. But still, justice can happen, can be. But it's very, very difficult, and it's a big issue to try it. So most of the girls, the women, prefer not to do anything.
אני מאוד ימנית ואוהבת את ראש הממשלה בנימין נתניהו, אבל אני חושבת שלנכים הם ממש לא עוזרים, והממשלה לא ממש עוזרת. היא מאוד דואגת רק לעצמה ולכיס שלה, לביטחון של הילדים שלה ולאחרים, לאזרחים הפשוטים, ואם זה נכים ואם זה סטודנטים, היא לא עוזרת במאומה. היא מאוד אגואיסטית הממשלה. אני אגיד לך למה, בגלל שאם היה, למשל, אם המשטרה למשל הייתה באמת עוזרת לאנשים שהם מרביצים או עוצרת אותם או מכניסים אותם לכלא לשנים רבות, ל10, 15 ו20 שנה, אז באמת הם לא היו עושים את זה, הם היו מפחדים, אבל בגלל שהם רואים שמה אכפת לי, אני יכול להרביץ, אני יכול לעשות מה שאני רוצה, כי לא עושים לי כלום, אז למה לא? הם יכולים להמשיך בשלהם. וזה גרוע מאוד וחבל מאוד.
Women are taking more action by the day. Strikes, protests, and other forms of activism have been taking center stage all across Israel. The goal? To acknowledge the fact that Israel is quite unsafe for women and that something needs to be done about it.
Aside from men in position of power, women in Israel, minors even, have to worry about being attacked for their cultural or religious beliefs. In one Israeli town on the outskirts of occupied Jerusalem, Al-Quds, protests have flared over demands to crack down on zealots accused of harassing girls as young as 8 years old. It all started after a child was spat on by rabbis for not adhering to the strict dress code in the town.
זה לא ייתכן דבר כזה שאנחנו תושבי בית שמש צריכים לסבול מהם. ושילדה בת 8 שתעבור ויורק עליהם. אם הייתה ילדה שלי ומישהו יורק עליהם, אני לא יודע מה הייתי עושה לו. לא ייתכן דבר כזה, שבן אדם, ילדה תעבור ברחוב, ילדה בת 8, מלובשת בסדר, היא לא הייתה ערומה. דבר כזה לא עושים.
The dispute in Beit Shemesh underscores a widening fault line in Israel between religiously devout and a majority of non-observant Jews. This dispute has been increasingly portrayed in attacks on women of different social and economic status. Protests against violence against women would take place in Israel every now and then. The latest protest came amidst International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women earlier in November. Tens of thousands of women in Israel came out to protest. In December 2018, thousands of women went on strike and tens of thousands rallied across Israel to protest women killed by a partner, family member, or someone known to them. And what they say is the authorities' failure to stem a sharp increase in violence against women.
Violence against women in Israel has become a hot topic, but it's been going on for decades. As we learned, there has been countless instances of abuse from politicians and the elites to the bottom end of the society. And this phenomenon continues to plague the Israeli society. Israeli women have been fighting for better treatment, but progress has yet to be made. And that was the result of our investigation for this edition of Inside Israel. Want to share your personal experience? Tweet us at inside_Israel. Until next time.